The owners of the club, they listen. They don't.
The Glazers.
The Glazers. They don't care about the club. I mean, professional sport.
Do you ever talk to them, the Glazers?
Never.
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 Not since you've gone back.
No. They give all the power to the president, the sport directive.
Well, look who's back at it again. Cristiano Ronaldo, more clips dropping from his explosive Piers Morgan interview that's dropping on Wednesday and Thursday. Welcome to Room 442. Michael Singh, Sarah Pararia. Once again, Mikey, Ronaldo talking, this time about the Glazers, saying the Glazers don't care about the club, and the fans should know.
There's one thing that he got right. Right?
Is this the only positive that's coming out of this negative interview?
That a player has finally come out, a current player at least, and has spoken out against the Glazers. Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of fans will get on his side for. There's not a lot in that interview that fans will back Cristiano Ronaldo for, at least not Manchester United fans. You know, you're going to have a lot of Cristiano Ronaldo fans that are going to be happy about the interview. But Manchester United fans, I don't know. This part, absolutely. The Glazers, since they've taken over, I think Cristiano said it. He said Manchester United are more of a marketing club, right? That's what the Glazers essentially are. They're business people, and the players that they've brought in, while they have invested, or I don't know if they've invested the money, but they have spent a lot of money on Manchester United's incoming transfers, but they've been going for bigger names for marketing standpoint. They don't care about the football club. They care about putting out a product on the pitch that'll excite the world. Absolutely. So, yeah, I think it's taken away from what Manchester United was, especially when you think of like the class of 92 that came up, right? Those are homegrown academy players that understood what it meant to be a Manchester United player. You don't have that anymore.
No, not at all. And he talks about some of those players as well. But in this next clip, he actually mentions the fans and why he thinks they're right.
The fans, they're always right. I think the fans should know the truth, should know that the players, we want the best for the club. I want the best of the club. This is why I'm coming to Manchester United. This is why I love this club. But you have some things inside the club which don't help to Manchester reach the top level as City, Liverpool, and even now Arsenal, for example.
All right, so there you have it. Ronaldo saying he loves the club, but he really wants the fans to know the truth. What does he mean?
I'm not quite sure. I think Mikey kind of hinted at it a bit. There's always been a little bit of a disconnect, it seems like, over the past couple years with Manchester United fans and who's on top
Especially
there.
since the post-Sir Alex Ferguson era.
100%. And the thing is, when you have someone who is so influential to a club, somebody like Sir Alex Ferguson, of course it is going to take a lot of time to forget finding someone to replace that person. You're not going to, but to find somebody to fill those shoes, to kind of come back from the era that was. We've seen so many clubs go through those eras, and it doesn't just happen consistently. You know, you usually go through a crazy good era, and then you dip for a while, and then you might go through a completely new era that could be relatable to that one. But it's hard to, you're not going to fill Sir Alex Ferguson's shoes. So I think he's just referencing the fact that it's been a tough time for Manchester United, and the fans should know that. But at the same time, he keeps referencing this thing, and I spoke about this yesterday, that he loves the club. And I'm like, then why would you do this to the club? Because he's talking poorly about so many components of it.
He's trying to hit both sides. He wants the best of both worlds. He wants to leave the club, but he still wants to be loved by the fans and the supporters, right?
Yeah.
Which it's difficult to do. You can never have the best of both worlds. And if you're constantly looking at the past, and it hasn't been the same since Sir Alex Ferguson, which has been talked about for years by players. I mean, we understand United are in a transitional period, but at some point you got to let that go. And now this is a new time for United.
Let me ask you something. Do you guys think that this interview will open eyes at Manchester United? Do you think those in the higher-ups will start to actually make movement on some of these issues and tackle these issues because Ronaldo has now spoken up about these issues?
Potentially. I mean, when it comes to the Glazers, the whole Glazer out movement, they've tried to mute that as much as possible, but they can't edit this one, what Ronaldo's saying. So this is now out in the public. Will they have to answer to it? We'll see. We don't know. Could there be some change? Like I said, this could be the only positive from this interview, but I mean, if the owners don't want to come out and speak about it and change anything because they're happy about the way that the club is operating, then nothing's going to change.
Also, are they just going to feel super embarrassed and insulted right now that they're not going to even try and get involved? Because, I mean, they're going to be, I'm sure they're already fuming with this, right? So it's hard to say. Are they just going to take a step back and just say, you know what, we want him out. Hopefully he just leaves and we're just going to continue going on? Because you referenced it, like Manchester United kind of has turned that corner. They're looking like a much more solid team. So maybe they look at that and they say, hey, we're playing well. Let's focus on that.
And he's not the only one to talk about it, right? Former players, Gary Neville, Rio Ferdinand, Paul Scholes, Roy Keane, they've talked about this ad nauseum, honestly.
But when Cristiano Ronaldo
when he says it,
speaks,
it's different, right? So he actually talked about some of those pundits, his former players. He's suggesting that maybe they're using his name for fame.
Because it's easy to criticize, but if you don't know the old story, it's easy, you know. But it's, Piers, as I say before, it's part
Are they
of...
still friends of yours, or do you have a line where...
They are not my friends.
Do you feel a bit betrayed when they do that because you played together?
It's easy to criticize. I don't know if they have a job in television that they must criticize to be more famous. I really don't understand.
Do you think they use your name a bit to get attention?
I think they take advantage of that because they are not stupid.
Do you agree, Mikey? I mean, we're kind of in that similar position as these pundits where we have to talk about what's going on in the footballing world and in the news, and it so happens to be that Cristiano Ronaldo is at the top of that list.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, he would probably hate it if people weren't talking about him, right? He makes everything about him. Look at the way that he dropped his interview right before the World Cup, right? He wants everybody to talk about him. So he can't have it both ways. He can't complain when people talk about him, whether it's good or bad. He has to accept it, right?
Yeah. But, sir, does he have a point saying that he thinks that these pundits, his former players, are criticizing him to build up their brand?
Absolutely not. I don't think so, in my personal opinion, because like you said, we have to talk about things that are going on in the footballing world for our jobs. And then Mikey hit the nail on the head. When we're not talking about it, and he's upset. He's just trying to get after these guys for something. So he's going to say, oh, okay, they're using my name because they want to get more famous. What are you on about? Like, you're actually, like, he's starting to, like, run in these circles that just aren't really
Covering
making
all of his
sense.
tracks. Is he immune to criticism? Is that what it is?
I mean, you would think no, based on what he's been through.
Yeah.
And I was going through it last night, like some interviews that Gary Neville has been in, some post-match stuff, some pre-game stuff. He didn't really say anything bad. He was saying essentially that Manchester United need leadership, and he should be the guy to do that. And if not, then move on. And it's best for both the club and him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
No, it's petulant. This is Ronaldo's brand at this point. There's little things that irk him or just rub him the wrong way.
Mm.
And he makes it known, like that handshake snub with Gary Neville, right?
Like, what are you doing?
You know what I mean? It's
I don't want to criticize the guy too much because we're going off clips. There's still a full 90-minute interview to be dropped. And Piers Morgan seems to suggest that when this is dropped, more people will probably take Ronaldo's side. We'll have to wait and see. But there's some players, some pundits, Graham Souness being one of them, and Roy Keane, who are on Ronaldo's side. Can you understand where they're coming from?
I think they've just gone through certain things at Manchester United that maybe he's gone through. We've actually seen some football players, not whether they're coming out or people are pulling out, you know, their old interviews or statements, you know, Alexis Sanchez, Jesse Lingard, and their struggles at Manchester United, saying, you know, they really struggled because of the way the club functioned. They weren't happy there. I think there's always going to be players that are unhappy at clubs, especially when you have a club that is so big as Manchester United. It is probably a really difficult atmosphere at times. I can totally get that. And like I said yesterday, I think maybe Ronaldo wasn't being treated the right way. And maybe that's what, you know, Keane's referencing as well. I just think the whole way he went about it, like, come on.
Of course. And let's not forget it was his decision to move to Manchester United. Right. Exactly. We're waiting for the 90-minute interview, but I promise no more Ronaldo talk today. Coming up, I sit down with Peter Galindo to talk about Canada and their chances at the World Cup. Welcome back to Room 442. Joining me now is Peter Galindo of the Northern Football Podcast. Time to talk some Canada and Canada going to the World Cup. John Herdman, Peter, he named his 26-man squad. What really stood out for you from that list of 26?
For sure, Liam Fraser's inclusion. And when we heard that Daniil Henry was a doubt to make the squad, the first thought in my mind was, well, surely he's going to call up Raheem Edwards to shore up some of the left back depth, because right now Sam Adekubi is the only out-and-out left back in the squad. Now, we know Alphonso Davies can play there. Richie Larea has done it for Canada in the past as well. But when it came to him naming Liam Fraser in the end, it does make sense once you think about it, because when you look at some of the fitness concerns for Canada, they're mostly in the midfield, specifically Jonathan Osorio, Mark-Anthony Kaye, even guys like Atiba Hutchinson, and I suppose even David Wotherspoon, because he's still working his way back to playing 90 minutes every single week after his ACL tear last year. So it makes sense to add the eighth midfielder, just given that there are a few potential concerns at this point. They could still be solved leading into that Japan friendly as well as the World Cup itself. But for right now, that is definitely still a concern. So it makes complete sense why Fraser in the end did get the call up.
Just on Atiba Hutchinson. So Herdman said he's definitely in the depth chart when it comes to center back. And obviously he's not at 100%. He's only played 70 minutes in the last cup match for Turkey. How concerning is that?
For me, I think we're going to find out the answer in that Japan game, because I imagine he's going to start. Don't think he'll go the full 90 minutes, but he'll certainly get 60 to 70, let's say, similar to what he got in the cup match for Besiktas. And he looked very good. Now, albeit that was a third division side. So you have to take that with a grain of salt, of course. But in possession, he still looked very fluid. He was spraying passes across the pitch just like he does whenever he's in rhythm. And I think when he comes up against Japan, that's going to be the perfect test just to see how he reacts to an opponent that presses aggressively, plays very quickly, and are not going to give him a lot of time on the ball. If he passes that test, then I have no concerns come World Cup time. If he doesn't, then that's probably a different conversation we're going to be having.
Okay, let's talk about that Japan match, which goes down tomorrow, I believe, on Wednesday. What are you expecting to learn from that match if you're John Herdman?
Outside of Atiba's fitness, I think you're going to want to see how that defense handles themselves under pressure, building from the back, because Bahrain was giving them problems. And if Bahrain is causing issues, albeit without the full complement of players, what's a team like Japan going to do to them? We saw that they frazzled the US when they played them in a friendly a couple of months ago. And I'm sure Canada's going to get the same sort of treatment here. So will Alistair Johnston, will Kamal Miller, will Stephen Vittoria, especially, because he's the one who kind of struggles a bit under pressure when he is on the ball. How are they going to react to those situations? Can Atiba help them? Can Stefan back a bit and help them in that situation? That's going to be one area for sure. The other one is going to be, will Canada be ruthless in front of goal? Because even though you could make the argument from the Uruguay game that, all right, Uruguay took a 2-0 lead, they let Canada sort of have possession knowing that there wasn't much of a threat. If Jonathan David or Kyle Larin put one of their clear-cut chances away and make it 2-1, it's a completely different match. And maybe they even come back and draw that game. So that's going to be one area that I am going to be curious to see how Canada adapts to that game. If they can produce similar chances, are they going to have that killer instinct in front of goal to get them results against these top tier sides?
Does Japan's style, does it replicate any of the teams in Group F?
Probably Croatia's, in terms of how quickly they play, in terms of the depth they have in the midfield. There were some really quality players who missed out on Japan's squad, like Reo Hatate for Celtic, who is an everyday starter for a Champions League club. He couldn't crack their squad in the end, just because they are 2 or 3 deep in whether it's the number 6 position, the number 8 position, or the number 10 position. So they're very well covered there. I would say that would be the proper test in terms of, Croatia and Japan sort of being the, I guess, comparables here.
Yeah, and that's interesting because a lot of people seem to think maybe Croatia is the team that Canada can potentially steal a point from. So, I mean, seeing that on Wednesday is going to be very interesting. Let's get to your best 11. Based on current form, who gets into Peter Galindo's starting 11?
Based on form, and I don't think it's going to differ too much from what they throw out there against Belgium, I think you're going to go Milan Borjan in goal, and then we'll say that Canada's playing in possession here. So a back three of Alistair Johnston, Stephen Vittoria, followed by Kamal Miller. I am going to go Tejan Buchanan on the right, and then a midfield trio of Stefan Eustáquio. I'm going to go Samuel Piette here, just because Atiba hasn't been playing. And honestly, right now, Ismail Kone probably makes up the rest of that trio. And then on the left, we got Sam Adekubi, of course. And then up front, you've got Jonathan David and Alphonso Davies. So obviously, Davies, as we know, is hurt, but he should be good to go for that Belgium game. That is who I believe right now, based on current form, is the best 11. One or two of those guys probably will change for that Belgian game. I'm looking at probably Junior Hoylett coming in for an Ismail Kone, just because Herdman likes to lean on experience in these big games. But certainly right now, Kone deserves a shout for being in the best 11.
When it comes to Belgium, I mean, we can expect them probably to dominate most of the possession. But is there a world where tactically they change that up and give the ball back to Canada?
I think so, at least at times, because I think everybody's going to be aware, understandably so, that Canada's threat is in transition because of their speed out wide, specifically through Davies, through Buchanan, Adekubi, and you can really rattle off a bunch of names in that position of the pitch. But that is why I think a lot of these teams at times are going to cede the initiative, dare Canada to break them down, which at times they have struggled to do. Although I think slowly but surely, certainly in that Uruguay game, they're starting to figure out how to break those lines. It's just about finishing the chances. So if that does happen, that'll be a massive test for Canada, not just in terms of being able to break it down, but then also how are they going to react in defensive transition? Because Uruguay, as we saw in those 20 minutes in the middle of the first half, really torched them in that situation. All the more reason why I think they should go with a trio to kind of protect against that.
Yeah, and obviously Belgium carry a bit more pace going forward than Uruguay. Okay, so let's get it here. Your realistic expectations for Canada at this World Cup. Please say they're going to win the World Cup.
I wish I could, but I think a realistic expectation, and I think that this isn't out of the realm of possibility here, is to almost replicate what Iran did in 2018 in that Spain-Portugal group, and that they could take a point off the big boys, get a win in that quote-unquote winnable game against Morocco, and then probably narrowly miss out on the knockout stage. I personally believe that of the two giants in the group, Belgium might be the most susceptible here because they have a slow defense. They're still leaning on the likes of Jan Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld at center back. We know the pace that Canada does possess. The midfield seems to have a couple of question marks. Yuri Tielemans and Axel Witsel might be the go-to pairing there, but because Witzel's playing a lot at center back for Atletico Madrid, his instinct, at least when he's playing for Belgium these days, is to drop a little too deep, which means that the midfield gets stretched. So there might be opportunities there for them to exploit. I say they get a point there, lose to Croatia, and then either draw or beat Morocco to finish third in the group and really give a massive test all three teams.
Yeah, 4 points should be enough for Canada to get through that group. I hope so. I hope so, Peter. And you're going to be down there. I wish you all the best. Congratulations on covering a World Cup. I know that's such a huge moment. And thank you so much for doing this.
Appreciate it, Albert. Anytime.
All right, take care. Okay, coming up on 442, we wrap up today's show with some predictions for the Golden Boot. Welcome back to Room 442. Thanks to Peter Galindo for stopping by to chat Canada. Let's continue with the World Cup now, guys. The Golden Boot, which is awarded to the top scorer. We each have our pick here. We're going to start with Mikey Singh with a bit of a left field pick here. Good player.
Yeah.
Gabriel Jesus for Brazil.
Yeah.
I was going to say Barcelona.
Okay.
Brazil.
Yeah, if you want to talk about value and good value here, I think Gabriel Jesus offers that. 34-1 plus 3,400. You can find him on some books. And the reason why, okay, Arsenal, 5 goals, 5 assists this season for Arsenal in the league. I think 8 goals overall. So he's shown that he can find the back of the net. He actually isn't in terrific form, at least goal-scoring form, heading into this tournament. However, he's going to be playing with a Brazilian side whose offense, we know, they're lethal, right? And they have an opportunity to go really deep in this group. And I do believe Gabriel Jesus will be their starting number 9. So if you're starting number 9 for Brazil at this World Cup in particular,
Yeah.
you're going to be scoring goals.
But Mikey, he hasn't scored since Arsenal played Spurs October 1st.
Yeah, but at Arsenal, he's asked to do a lot, right? It's not just about scoring goals for Jesus. I don't think that'll necessarily be the case for Brazil. He has guys like Casemiro behind him that can do a lot of the dirty work. And then you guys, Anthony and Vinicius, you got players around him that can carry a lot of the load that sometimes he carries for Arsenal. So I think if he's just scoring goals,
But there's so many egos at Brazil. Does it not worry you that, like you mentioned with France and Mbappe, could the goals be, kind of split up between Neymar, Richarlison, whoever, Anthony, if he feels like there's so many players that can score on this team.
Yeah, no, that is probably one of the things that are deterring people away. But if you're the number 9, you're going to be set up by guys like that as well. Hopefully Brazil's working towards a greater goal, which is winning the World Cup. And again, at plus 34 to 1, while he might not be my first pick to win the Golden Boot, I think the value's there to at least sprinkle some money on him.
It's
right?
good value, and you have to think when picking a top scorer that he's going to go deep into the tournament, which Brazil should, and he's most likely to start as well. Let's talk about your guy,
Surprise!
Lionel Messi. What do we got him at here? 14 to 1.
I think, okay.
Not a bad show.
Yeah, the thing is with the Golden Boots, you have to think about teams that are going to go the distance. Gabi Jesus, Brazil, makes sense to me. Argentina, I think, can win this whole thing. The thing is with this guy, he scores all different kinds of goals, right? You have to remember, Messi, he barely does a tap, but he can do a tap, and he does outside the box. Messi scores free kicks, and he's notorious for doing it, especially at World Cups, but he's been doing it a lot for PSG lately too. So for me, if they have a good tournament, they go all the way. I can't see, unless there's a weird match like you were talking about, Lewandowski, Poland beating Saudi Arabia like 7-0.
It's usually around 5 to 6 goals.
Exactly. So to me, unless there isn't something super bizarre that happens, I think that he has the best chances of winning, because I think Argentina are going to go the distance, and he can just score every type of goal.
Yeah,
besides
and
maybe a penalty.
He's also on penalties, though, which is huge. I mean, you want a player that's on penalties just in case it's going to come up. And not penalty shootout penalties. I'm talking penalties in during regulation or in extra time. I'm going with his teammate, Lautaro Martinez, 23 to 1. I think it's 21 goals for Argentina. Obviously, Messi is the guy, and Messi's my number 1 pick to win the Golden Boot, the Golden Ball, and the World Cup. And then eventually, we've talked about this, but Ballon d'Or, this is going to be a crazy next year. But Lautaro Martinez, if there's another guy that's going to get the goals for Argentina, in a team that's going to make a deep run, I think it's going to be him. And we know he's starting every single game. He is their number 9. He's the Aguero now for Argentina. I mean, you also have Di Maria there.
I was going to say, I think I would take Di Maria over this guy to score more goals.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa. Di Maria's not that much of a goal scorer, though.
All right. Okay. Well, let's see.
Let's do it. Debate.
I like it, but I'm here
Di
for the
Maria is so
controversy.
important for this team, and he
He
can
is.
score. He can score. Lautaro Martinez has kind of been not amazing with Argentina, whereas Di Maria has been. He hasn't been called up the entire time. He's very inconsistent. Even with Inter's kind of been on and off. That's my biggest issue, is form and how he blends with this team, whereas Di Maria is crucial. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, you're right. If he plays the number 9, it makes sense theoretically, but I think Di Maria will score more than him.
Okay, quickly,
Interesting.
about a minute left, but we did dismiss Kylian Mbappe and Karim Benzema.
And
Mbappe plus 850, Benzema 14 to 1. Should we not be overestimating these guys?
I think value-wise, I don't think they're worth it. And there's also a chance where France may not go as deep as a team like Brazil or Argentina, right? France's midfield, as we've talked about with Pogba and Conte out, there are question marks there. There's question marks at the back as well, some banged up injuries. I don't know. Can France go as deep as people think they can? And that's going to be crucial for someone who wins the Golden Boot award.
All right, well, it's settled. Cristiano Ronaldo is going to win the Golden Boot at the World Cup for Portugal at 16 to 1. Thanks for watching the show today. Michael Singh, Sarah Pariah, Albert Vartanian. Stay tuned for more coming up tomorrow.